Hello, Mechwarriors, and welcome to the Mech Bay, where we fix your mech and fix your game. What's going on, Mechwarriors? I'm your host, Josh. I've got my co-host, Steve, the only Falcon to have claws on his hands, with me today.
I guess I have claws on my hands. That's news to me.
I mean, wouldn't a crab falcon have claws on its hands instead of its feet?
Are they? I mean, maybe claws or pincer. Birds with pincers.
Talons, maybe? Who knows? But we are the Mech Bay Podcast, your number one source for all things casual to competitive tabletop Battletech. And today, we have the pleasure to have renowned Battletech author Bryan Young on to talk about the intricacies of restarting your HPGs. Bryan, how are you?
I am splendid. How about yourselves?
We're good. We're getting through the week.
We're making it.
We're making it.
And now I've been looking forward to having you on all week, and I'm here, and this is great. I'm very excited.
No, I'm thrilled to be here.
So to our listeners that may not be as caught up on either the lore or just Battletech authors, who are you to them? Because I can give an introduction, but mine would be, kind of skewed.
So I've been writing Battletech. I've been writing in the Battletech universe for about 6 years now. I've written a number of books and a whole bunch of stories in Shrapnel. My first work in Battletech was the novel Honor's Gauntlet that was one of the first to start transitioning the Dark Age into the Ilklan era. And that was about Jade Falcons who were clearing out their occupation zone on their way to take Terra, which featured Archer Pride, who was an iconoclastic Jade Falcon who didn't really hold with the Mongol doctrine, and all of the problems that caused him because everyone in the Jade Falcons seemed to really like the Mongol doctrine at that point. And then I wrote A Question of Survival, which was about the leftover Falcons in the occupation zone who had no idea that, there were any surviving Falcons left on Terra after they lost to the Wolves, and how they rebuild. And the sequel to that book, Without Question, which is them struggling with their identity, and what being a Jade Falcon means in that post Mongol doctrine world in the hinterlands. And also Fox Tales, which is a collection of Fox Patrol stories. That's the mercenary unit I created in the pages of Shrapnel. They're a plucky band of terrible mercenaries that just really love mechs, and they're not terribly great at it, but they've got a lot of spunk, and they really want to keep doing it. And so that first collection is their first 5 adventures. And then after that, they had a serial novel in the pages of Shrapnel called Lone Wolf and Fox. And that brought them to the hinterlands as well. So I've done a whole bunch of stuff there. And there's been a whole bunch of other fiction in some of the source books. I've had fiction in Legends 2, in Hotspot's Hinterlands, in Ilkhan's Eyes Only, which just came out. I'll have a whole bunch more coming soon. I've done some short stories in some of the anthologies, both that have been out for a while and coming soon. And I'm working on a whole bunch of other stuff, including, most interestingly, well, it's all interesting, but the one everybody seems to be most excited for is the graphic novels that I'm co-writing with Mike Stackpole. So that's who I am in Battletech, which seems like reasonable credentials. Like, people might have heard of some of that stuff, maybe.
So, Bryan, I will tell you, my wife is a very tolerant woman. She allows me a great latitude when it comes to my hobbies, and she does not like Battletech. It's her one and only fault. Now, she a person who does not normally like Battletech, but knows a lot about it because I won't stop talking to her about it. She adores Foxtails. So I have to commend you for getting a person who absolutely loathes Battletech to love an element of Battletech. So she has asked me to ask you when the next story is coming out because she cannot get enough of them.
So have you had her read Lone Wolf and Fox?
Not yet. I have the shrapnels, but I have them digitally, so she needs to get a copy of them. But
so Lone Wolf and Fox is next, and when it gets collected, it will have an extra story that kind of tells their version of the Battle of Sudeten.
Okay.
Because if you've read Without Question, you know that the Lone Wolves took off to Sudeten and helped fight the Hell's Horses on behalf of G.E. Chistu's Jade Falcons. And so Katie and the Fox Patrol were there. And then there was the Christmas story that came out, which is a free download on the Catalyst web store, that I thought was just hilarious and adorable, where Katie is just trying to get some Christmas presents for the crew, and she has to rough some people up. And it's really about the true spirit of Christmas.
I'll have to tell her about those because I know she's looking forward to getting more of them.
So those are in the process of out or coming out. And then I have written a Fox Patrol novel. It's a short novel, and hopefully it'll come out this year or next.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That takes place after Lone Wolf and Fox.
Excellent.
So there's plenty more coming, and it's been really great to see them take off. Like, I've heard from folks at conventions and stuff that, like, hey, this is what got my kid into Battletech, or this is what, like, I've heard from more than a few people, like, that exact same story. My wife, like, puts up with my Battletech and she doesn't care about it, but I had her read Foxtails and she loves it. It was the same thing. Like, my wife was like, I handed her Honor's Gauntlet when it came out, and she's like, cool, and then put it aside. And then all the other stuff. And then Foxtails is what she read, and she's like, when is Lone Wolf and Fox getting collected? She doesn't want to go through the shrapnels. She wants to read Lone Wolf and Fox when it gets collected, because she really loves Katie and Archie and Evan and everybody else. And I'm really glad that that's bringing people who wouldn't ordinarily care about Battletech into Battletech, so that the people who are really into Battletech can share it with their loved ones who wouldn't ordinarily be into it. And that makes me really happy. And it's been mind-boggling to see, like, actual merch coming out. Like, I lost my mind when I saw, like, the dice pucks come out, or I need to get my hands on the patches and the pins now, and it's
so
weird.
Here's a question for you. On the cover of the Christmas novel, I believe, had like a bomber jacket. Are those going to be for sale? Do you know if those are coming?
I doubt it, but I really hope people make some and show up at shows with them.
Because there was a lot of chatter about, holy smokes, I have to get my hands on one of those jackets. So
yeah,
if you're listening, Catalyst, think about it. People would buy them.
Yeah, no, that would be terrific.
Thank you for coming on today. But I first have to interject. So you're the reason why Steve is obsessed with Jade Falcons. Was this a ploy, Steve? Did you get Bryan on today so it would be outnumbered 2-1, so I couldn't technically make fun of you for liking Ill Clan era Jade Falcons?
You already did in the intro. I've got claw hands now, apparently. That I look. You took your shot, but that's the only one you're going to get.
One shot.
You get one. No, when you told me that we were going to have Bryan on, I was obviously ecstatic, right? I mean, Bryan, I'm not sure if you caught up on our last episode, but we talked about our favorite novels for 2024, and I mean, you've attended several of the Mech Bay podcast book clubs that we do. And again, always appreciate you showing up to discuss your novels or other novels that we've been reading. But we did do Without Question, and that by far was my favorite novel that I read in 2024. Just, I mean, I'm slightly biased, but really enjoyable. And I love the way that you progress the clan, and we kind of get to see the struggles that G goes through, mentally, of where am I, how am I going to make us survive? B, how do I take care of these people? And C, how do we get out from underneath the shadow of Malvina Hazen now that we're moving forward, right? He's got to bounce he has to cash all the bad checks that she wrote, which is, it's interesting to see. So it gives a lot of new perspective on the clan, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that. Like, thank you for that. Because that's what's really interesting to me about them as well. Like, I feel like for a little while they were treated as very, I don't want to say two-dimensional, because there was some dimension to them, but they were very much, they were the heel, right?
A little mustache twirly. It's okay. You can say
it. But now seeing the depth that they can have, I have to admit, my favorite feedback that I get when I go do shows and stuff, when I go do signings or events and stuff, is people coming up and using expletives to say, "Screw you, I like the Jade Falcons now." That gives me a very, it gives me a lot of pleasure to hear that.
Yeah, it means you're doing your job as a writer, right? You're making people feel things, which is not always an easy task.
Yeah, no, it is, especially when Without Question came out, there was a lot of people who were like upset 3/4 of the way through the novel, where they're like, I hope these Ghost Bear kids don't end up with the Falcons. And now they're like, these Ghost Falcon, these Ghost Birds are the best, and please protect them. And I'm so glad they're Falcons now.
And if anything ever happens to them, we'll never forgive you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm not caught up on my Jade Falcon lore, but
this is why you don't like him yet.
Fun of them.
Yeah, I make fun.
He doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it.
I live in ignorance, so I don't get attached to them.
Look, you are too attached to your toaster worshipping weirdos and Avitu with her crazy eyes, right? It's too attached. You have to branch out and explore new things.
I mean, you say that, but there's no Jade Falcons in Bryan's latest novel.
No, I was waiting.
Waiting. You were wondering, maybe they'll show up at the end. No.
Well, look, if he can splash Katie, with the Lone Wolves, if he can kind of like just sneak them into Without Question, I thought maybe we'd see someone, they were going, well, I don't know if I can say that.
There's some spoilers. There's some spoilers that we could talk about for later.
Yeah.
About where, we can talk about that later.
Okay, we'll address that later. I don't want to give too much away for those that are excited to read this, but since we're kind of getting there in this most recent book, do we want to start talking about Voidbreaker?
Yeah, this was the book that I was most excited to come out when Catalyst announced, like, these are our next 2 years worth of products. There will be books about these characters, these factions, and I was like, whoa, Tucker Harwell, my brain's remembering, he's important. Why is he important in this era? Oh wait, he's the HPG guy. That's the main character for the entire Inner Sphere. All of our hopes and dreams are on this poor man's shoulders.
Yeah, Tucker's had a rough go, and it's only going to get rougher now that everybody wants him.
Very popular man.
Yeah, for folks who might not remember, the last place we saw him was outside of Devlin Stone's hospital room in Hour of the Wolf, where Chance Vickers and Alaric Ward went in and murdered him. And they came out and Tucker had vanished. And that was the last anyone had heard of him. And we pick him up from there and sort of pick up the pieces and figure out where he went and how he got there and what happens next.
Yeah, so that's the world that Tucker is living in. But that was one thing that I was really interested in, is what is the world after the Ill Clan, banner is raised? What is going on in the sphere? No one can really be searching for this one guy. They're all wondering, what's going on Terra? Who's in charge? What's the third Star League? But no, it's really about it. To me, it's really what is about Tucker. So, like, how did you perceive the world that he was kind of finding himself in now?
The inner sphere after the Wolves took Terra. Yes, you're right that a lot of people are distracted with the idea that the Wolves have taken Terra. There's a power vacuum in the hinterlands. There are issues with the fight going back and forth with the Draconis Combine and the Fed Sons. The Lyran Commonwealth is sort of inert, unable to make a decision. The Wolf Empire is sort of left out in the cold. The Free Worlds League is sort of undergoing its own problems, and the Capellan Confederation is making its moves. And everyone has a lot of things on their mind. But communication is important, and knowing what your enemy is doing is important. And so communication is really at the top of everybody's mind. And knowing that there are people alive who knew what life was like back when they could communicate quickly and efficiently, and knowing how much that changed warfare has to be at the top of a lot of people's minds. And so Tucker being a high value target for Alaric has made some dopey moves since he became Ilkhan, right? Alaric is a brilliant military strategist, but he's not the most, like, everything he does outside of the military seems to not be working out in his favor. But he's not an idiot, right? And so having that communication and knowing what's going on and needing things to speed up is definitely something he needs. And so Tucker Harwell is under no illusions that everyone wants him, and he has spent the last decade a guest of various powers trying to force him to fix this. And
you're very generous with the term guest, Brian. I don't know if I'd use guest.
I was hoping you could hear the air quotes around it. And so, like, when opportunities present themselves to disappear, he's going to take those, because there's a certain amount of freedom that he doesn't necessarily always get, because he knows that even if he's not viewing himself as a valuable target, he knows that others view him as a valuable target. And that's not a place he wants to be.
No, I think there's one line that he gives in the book where he's like, I've been a prisoner even if I haven't been called that for the last, like you said, decade.
Yeah.
So, but what I thought was really cool about this is it's not all from Tucker Harwell's perspective. Like, it would be really easy to just write, this is how I got captured and how I was forced to try to fix HPGs again, the novel. But no, this is the perspective of someone looking for him to try to do that. So
yeah, no, the genesis of this novel really came out of the 2023 Creative Summit that we had in Seattle, and there were a lot of story ideas thrown around, and we really set the tone and set the agenda for what the next few years of stories were going to look like coming out of BattleTech, so that all of the primary writers knew what the overall story was for everything moving forward, and the line developers were really sort of riding herd on that. And at one point during the conference, Ray Arastia, the line developer, pulled me aside, and we were looking at the map of the inner sphere. We had maps all over the place, and we had whiteboards and dry erase boards, and we had this big conference table.
I'm imagining the like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like it's all strings going to things. It's totally not a conspiracy. Someone's sleep deprived, hungover.
Well, we were all like that at some point. And whoever happened to have the whiteboard marker explaining some story point looked like Charlie Day in that meme at some point during the conference. But during one of the times where everybody was sort of paired off in twos or threes, Ray and I walked over to the map and we were talking about what would need to happen in the confines of a story about Tucker and what would happen with the HPGs. And I just kind of looked at him and said, this is a spy thriller. And I kind of explained to him how that would work structurally. And we just bounced these ideas back and forth. And he's like, we should do that. We should really do that. And so as soon as I got home, on top of all the other projects that I got out of that summit, that was a proposal that I wrote like immediately. And we felt that was important to sort of put together because it was something that I think people want some closure on. They want to know what's going on with Tucker. They want to know what's going on with the HPGs. That's a question that got raised 30 years ago in our universe, with Ghost, well, almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, right? In real lifetime, as far as the blackout and how that's going to get resolved. And so we did it that way, and everybody felt really passionately about that direction that we wanted to take as far as the James Bond riff on the BattleTech universe, which is something that we've seen snippets of, but never really this full-throated. And I was really excited about that challenge. And so that was the direction that we decided to take it in, and that I really wanted to from the very beginning, from those very first, inklings that this was going to be a story we were going to tell.
Yeah, I think you killed it. I mean, it's the feel of the book was great. The pacing was phenomenal. I love the kind of back and forth that you saw, like you see in any spy thriller, right? It's, are we being followed? Who's chasing us? What are we actually up against? Are we going to succeed? Can I ask you a little bit about our main character? And I know the first three chapters are out currently now. We follow Clan Fox, right? And I believe it's Kenja Rodriguez. Yeah. Is that pronounced
Kenja correctly? Rodriguez, yeah.
What did you do to come up with that character of Kenja, right? What was your thought process when you made her? Because she's, I think, distinct as a spy, right? As a character in BattleTech. I think she's very memorable to me. I'd love to hear what you thought about when you were making her.
So I was trying to think about the unique circumstances under which Clan Fox works, right? Where Clan Fox is very much in space a lot of the time, right? But also, how do you have someone who is an accomplished Mechwarrior, who's in Clan Fox, who values merchant values, who is an accomplished Mechwarrior, and then pluck them out of that and put them in the Watch, right? Like, how would you create someone who is in an elite Watch situation? And we don't always see a lot about the Watch, and warriors tend to look down on the Watch apparatus. And to be in the Watch and to do these undercover subterfuge, Mission Impossible, James Bond espionage kind of missions, you really have to pretend not to be a clanner, right? So you have to really have a person who is capable of understanding spheroids in a way that most clanners aren't. So she had to be a little bit of an iconoclastic clanner. She had to have a little bit of a different way of thinking. And in the book, you kind of see the mentor that she had that sort of plucked her out of her blood name trial, who saw her out of the box thinking and said, I think you have the material to be able to think this way, and I can train you this way and put you in these situations and that you could perform in them. And so for me, it was really sort of creating that character from the ground up, thinking, what would a watch agent need to have personality wise, knowing that they're in Clan Seafox, knowing what a Seafox background would generally be like, and then how would I flavor that in a way that would make her interesting for a James Bond style adventure? And give her some flaws, right? Like, I don't want people to look at the book and go, oh, she's just a Mary Sue. She's, I think the most interesting James Bond stories are the ones where he screws up royally and has to fix them.
Sure.
Fix those mistakes. And I wanted her to be that sort of character too, where she can screw up royally, admit that she screwed up, and then go fix those mistakes.
And we see a few of those missteps in the book. Obviously, we won't get into them for people that haven't read it yet, but I think you did that very well.
Reading this gave me I could feel my heart like getting anxious. And I was like, no, don't do this. It might work, but don't do this.
It's a hell of a gamble. Don't do it. No, that's yeah. Now you mentioned that she had to be a little bit of a different thinking clanner. Was that easier or harder to do? Because, I mean, obviously writing Inner Sphere people, you would assume to write normal, everyday people, right? Clanners are a little bit different, a little bit more alien in their thinking. But trying to write a clanner that thought like a spheroid, was that, I guess my question is, was it easier or harder to do?
Easier in that I'm always trying to make it so that every Battletech book I write is accessible to a first-time reader, right? And so clanners are automatically a little bit harder to introduce to a first-time reader, especially when the only characters are clanners, right? Because if you've got a first-time reader and you've got a whole bunch of clanners and no one is using contractions, a first-time reader is going to think it's a mistake. And if you don't have an outside perspective sort of telling you why they're doing that, that first-time reader is going to go, this feels stilted and weird.
I don't know if this person's been introduced to, human society for a couple hundred years.
Yeah, exactly. You'll notice the way I got around that in Question of Survival is that first scene with Emilio Hall, where he's in line with other members of the Dominion to vote. And the woman is like, oh, do I need to not use contractions with you? And he's like, no, like, you're fine.
It's a great scene.
Huh?
I said that's a great scene from, it's just so funny.
And part of that was to illustrate, yes, like they're apart from society, but a part of it. And part of it was to illustrate to first-time readers, this is how they talk. So when you don't see those apostrophes, this is why.
Right. It's not an accident. The author didn't, the author's not on some weird kick where he has to expand for word count or something.
Yeah. So Kenja having to be hyper conscious of how she's acting as a clanner versus a spheroid made it easy for her to have to explain in her narration in her head how she's code switching and why she's doing that, so that a first-time reader can go, oh, there's the difference between her clanner ideas and her spheroid ideas and how she's thinking about things. And so it made it a little easier to sort of be able to track that and feel like I was giving a first-time reader an easier, smoother experience with the differences between clan society and inner sphere society.
It felt natural to, like, this is how I would expect someone who's operating, whose work day-to-day involves either pursuing or dealing with people that are in the inner sphere. You can't. Someone who is 100% thinking and acting like a clanner isn't going to operate in that well. So one thing I loved, besides like I said, the anxiety this book gave me, because you were constantly following Kenja, just wondering how is this person going to achieve their goal of getting and acquiring Tucker for Clan Seafox and whatever that may entail in the future. But we rarely get such a detailed look at like jump ship operations and interstellar planning. Like, I don't want to say in a spy novel, but in a Battletech book, you would think it'd be about battle mechs. And no, this one's more drop ships and jump ships and plotting courses across different faction space.
Yeah, no, this book was one of the reasons that I thought this would work really great as a spy thriller when Ray and I were standing at that map, because we were looking at where the story had to start and where the story had to end, because even as we were sitting there in that creative summit, the beginning and the ending of the story were decided for us. Because of material printed in Hour of the Wolf and Tamar Rising. So we had a start point and an end point, both in location and date. And so we had to figure out how to get from one side of the inner sphere to the other across a very specific amount of time and have a bunch of cool stuff happen in between. And the sort of planet, like, why would they go to these specific planets? How would they get there? How long does it take to get to these planets? What are the recharge times like? And that stuff, that was some of the hardest stuff on the book, actually, trying to work that out. And I had Josh Perrion, actually, who was the associate developer who was in charge of Ilkhan's Eyes Only. He was actually working with me hand in glove on this book to help me work that stuff out and help me figure that stuff out. Like, that's always some of the hardest stuff, right? Like, there's a planet they go to where it's like a 23-day burn time.
Yeah.
And
I saw that and I was like, oh yeah. Man, like most books would just be like, all right, we'll be there in a month, essentially, and just hand wave. And no, it's like, now that's 23 days of having to plan and think and like what's going on the ship.
Yeah. And trying to find a way to make that chase tense. All of those chases, every time there's some of these long burn times or these recharge times, or making the distance between jump points and planets mean something. Especially like the moment where they're in Ghost Bear territory. I don't want to ruin what happens there, but the distance, right? Like, you kind of forget in Battletech sometimes how much distance can how far things can be, right? Like, you can't just instantly and immediately do things, and how you might have to think on the fly how to shorten things, how to make things go faster if you're actually in a hurry, in ways that, that out of the box thinking is going to help you in ways that most clanners might not think of.
Not every travel time can be solved with an 80s montage, right? Sometimes you have to work out the timing and how you actually solve the problem.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Because I definitely, like Steve said, the pacing with this was great. And I definitely felt like every jump mattered. That was more time. They are exposed. Things can happen. Enemies and, third parties, fourth parties even can,
And who the hell's chasing them, and why, and how did they find out, and are they being tracked, and how do they know?
Yeah, and I don't think there was any point in this novel where I went, well, that's weird. Why is this happening now? Right? Everything that occurred seems to have a logical flow and a rational, but there was always an explanation. There was no gap or hole that, was left unexplained. So I appreciated that. Now, you did mention that you had a hard start date and a hard end date for your plot, right, from when these events needed to occur. Were you basically given carte blanche in between those things? Could you do basically whatever you wanted to fill those, or were you? I mean, how much were you shackled? Right.
So there were a few things, specifically the location of Voidbreaker Station. Like I named Voidbreaker Station and sort of came up with sort of the details of it, but its location was something that was determined for me. The planet that they run some tests on was determined for me. There were a few things like that were determined for me because of some other story stuff. But the end planet and the beginning planet, because of those things, were determined. Aside from that, I had written a proposal based on just the rough conversations that Ray and I had. And for the most part, it was just sort of, okay, go to. As long as I included those things that they had said, that was that. The HPG technology stuff, that was probably the stuff that was most gone over, and that was because there's a lot of consternation about HPGs and the blackout and how things work and whatnot, and there's sort of like this internal document about what actually happened, and I just needed to make sure everything was accurate to the document.
Sure.
You can't release the textbook that, CGL uses. Like, this is how HPGs actually work, and this is how we tell the Battletech fan base that it works.
It was a really interesting challenge to communicate all of that, not only just to talk like through Tucker, but also have him communicate that in lay terms to people around who weren't scientists and things like that.
That is probably one of my favorite scenes when, again, if I say too much, just let me know and we'll back it up. But there's the scene where Tucker explains his theory, and then everyone sits there and looks at him like they're dumb as rocks. And then he has to try it again and explain it in warrior terms so they can kind of figure out what he's talking about. That was just I found a very humorous element. It's a very serious scene. Everyone's, focused on what Tucker's saying and, will this work? And then he's like, you don't understand the thing that I'm saying. Hold on, let's back up and try it again. It's just, I got a lot of enjoyment out of that particular scene.
I did try to balance that tone where I think some of my favorite spy movies or espionage movies, whether it's or infiltration movies, right? So it's not, I don't want anybody to think like, oh, it's just straight up James Bond, but like the Mission Impossible stories or like Guns of Navarone, right? I think there's a lot of Guns of Navarone. Yes, there's a lot of tension, and yes, there's a lot of military action in them, but it's always undercut with this sort of like humor in the right ways, or like also like a gallows humor as well. And I tried really hard to sort of put those moments in there. There's a couple that I really like, and I hope people enjoy them, and I don't want to spoil them here, but
sure.
We'll spoil them next month in book club when we talk about all this.
Yeah.
We'll give everyone a chance to read about it. Then we'll come to that.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I was a little bit surprised with, right, being a Battletech novel, I think this Battletech novel that I read had probably the least amount of mech fights in it while still being incredibly entertaining. I think the only other one that I read that had fewer mechs in it was the Nellis Academy incident. Mm-hmm. So I think you got the balance right. I mean, I was entertained the entire time, but did you ever feel that you needed more or less of the mechs being
Constantly.
a Battletech book?
Constantly. I mean, I think there's 3 major mech sequences. And I felt like I needed at least that. And I was always looking for places I might be able to sneak more into. And there was a suggestion to replace one scene with a mech battle with one of the editors. And I was like, here's exactly why that won't work. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. That won't work. But so there was always me on the lookout, because I was worried that like BattleTech fans would be like, needs more mech, right? Like, you know, but I think it did have it at the right moments, right? Like the climax is always hinged on a mech battle.
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I don't think it was overdone or underdone. I just was curious if there was ever that, fight about do I need more or less, and I appreciate your insight.
Internally, yes, always, constantly.
Yeah, I will say my favorite fights were the ones not in the mechs. They were the unaugmented, zero-G combat, which I think I've read so many like BattleTech books with jump ship and like space operations, and it's like there's not a lot of zero-G hand-to-hand combat, and this one gave it to me, and it gave it to me with like if I could have chosen, no, I would have chosen more poorly than what I was given. Like this was a supreme treat.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
These zero-G hand-to-hand fights were absolutely brutal. They were fast and decisive in a way that a normal, real hand-to-hand combat situation would be. This isn't a movie where these people take 30 punches to the face. It just doesn't happen that way. But in very few words, you managed to really impress upon me the brutality of hand-to-hand combat in zero-G. It was not gross, but it was very visceral.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things too I was leaning on, where it was like, I know we're not going to have as many mech battles, but we are going to get some stuff that we haven't seen a lot of. And those zero-G battles did make me feel more comfortable knowing that we weren't going to have as many mech battles.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite scene, without spoiling, because it is so much a treat to know what's happening and like have it unfold to your eyes as you're reading each page. Steve, what was your nondescript, spoiler-free scene that just really stuck with you?
I think getting to see, I don't think this is a spoiler, getting to see Seafoxes conduct business in a marketplace. I think that's probably my favorite. Like that scene was very, the initial part of that scene was humorous, and then the climax of that scene was incredibly intense, and I love the way that it played out. So I think, without getting too specific, I think that whole sequence over the course of a couple of days was probably my favorite.
See, I'm trying to remember the Randall Bill's Seafox novel, the Dark
Hunters of the Deep.
Hunters of the Deep. Yeah, it definitely fleshed out a lot of what had already been shown in Hunters of the Deep, but it brought it more to life. Like, okay, this is what's happening. The Dark Age has been established. These little encampments of sea foxes are established on planet. How are they operating? How are they interacting with the Sea Fox clan as a whole? Like, that was great to see how they were integrated.
Randall's work on Clan Sea Fox was immensely influential and helpful on this, and it's really like gratifying to hear that it felt like it was an extension and not like some left turn out of what Randall did. I wouldn't want anybody to feel like I was ruining anything that Randall had created.
No, I think I had mentioned in literally last year's roundup when I read that book, I was like, I felt like I wanted more. Like I came into this and I tasted a good meal, and it was like, okay, where's the dessert? Where's the steak? I need that now. And I felt like this was, it took a year, sir, but here's the rest of the meal. Like not just as a Sea Fox fan, but just as how is a clan that is very not traditional in any regard operating?
Yeah.
Bryan, what would you say your favorite scene to write was, without getting too spoilery?
Oh man. Without getting too spoilery, maybe the scene with the ghost bear.
Oh,
that was tense.
That was very nice. I like
tense.
That a lot.
Yeah, that was hard to make tense, and hearing that it was tense makes me feel very happy also, because it was like yeah.
I think you did a nice job teasing without teasing. You foreshadowed that scene earlier in the book, and I thought it felt very natural. Sometimes authors have a tendency to be a little heavy-handed with imagery or foreshadowing, but this one I thought was just chef's kiss, right? Very, very light, and then things happened.
Oh no, it was foreshadowed. I didn't even pick that up.
How did you, Josh?
I'm very bad at thinking backwards. I'm in the moment and thinking forwards and what's going to happen next. Not what has already happened. No, that's not me. That's not my
This podcast is also a great example of how difficult it is to talk about something without actually talking about something. It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah. No, that's the one that was suggested to me. Like, you could replace this with a mech duel. Here's how you could do it. And I'm like, no, here's how that doesn't work. And part of it was just the speed at which they needed to get through to the next part.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it would have detracted from that encounter if it had been a mech battle. I think you made the right choice there. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that one might have been one of the favorites, because I got to it and I was just like, oh, this is how this is going to work. And I think it'll be different, and I think it'll be fun, and I think here's how I can make it tense and get them to the next place.
It was great.
No, it was great. It definitely left me, like, as a whole, like, I know this can't be the end of the story, because it just can't. Like, there's so much in the inner you can't fix one problem in one place, and then it instantly spread. So, tell me this isn't where Tucker Harwell / Kenja Rodriguez's story ends.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more pages. No, more than anything, the book, and I hope people reading it, I just had fun writing it. Like, it was a book that just came very easily. It was fun to write, and I hope that people have fun reading it. And if they have half as much fun reading it as I had writing it, then I think everybody will have a good time.
I hope so. I mean, I can speak for myself as someone who doesn't partake in all of the main lore, that I enjoyed this as both a standalone novel and as a what's going on in the sphere. What are the main characters doing that affects everything. So,
I mean, you made it your favorite novel of 2024, despite the fact that it's not out yet, Josh. You cheated.
I cheated,
You cheated. But no,
there's a chance give me my best for 2025 too. Who knows?
You can't double dip. I mean, I'm sure Bryan would love that, but you can't double dip. That's not fair. You got to read more books. Bryan will have to write more books, and you can read those books, and those can be your favorite.
Alas, there were no proto-mechs, so it's out of contention for 2025.
You guys could switch. He could read without question for 2025.
There you go. That would also require him to read, A Question of Survival, which, yeah, you're gonna have to. We'll make a Falcon lover out of you yet, Josh. It'll happen. It'll happen.
No. Steve, do you have anything else?
I really loved it. I'm not a big Skyfox guy, but I feel like I know the clan better now, and I got to see a real inside look as to how they operate, and had fun along the way. I mean, it was a great story that was exciting. I don't think I ever got bored. Right. I mean, sometimes books have, you've got excitement and then you've got like the eddy that you kind of swirl around in before the next plot point. But this thing was a real page turner, and I couldn't put it down.
No, even like when they are in the drop or in the jump ship, like, where could he be? Where could he be going? I have to plot this out. There's no downtime that, like, even in those, we have to recharge, like, put out the sails and do all that. It's like, no, there's no like waiting around. It's still a ship. There's still operations that need to go happen. But also, Kendra's there to do a job, and you don't get a break until it's done. Until Tucker is delivered to Twycross, it's not done.
Also, like to voice my objection. You killed Star Captain Young. She just gets murdered off screen. That was horrible. I'm not happy about that.
Neither was I. I felt really terrible about that. It was a tragedy.
It's a bummer.
I wish something could have been done about it.
Yeah, if only someone had the power to change the words. Oh no.
No, it's just it's another one of those things. It was part of that extra weight Kenja needed to carry.
It had to go, and I think it was the right story decision, but it doesn't mean I'm happy about it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of those story decisions that I'm not necessarily happy about either, but they had to happen. That's when I know they're right, when I get pissed off about them, and like when I'm writing them and like it takes me an extra day to like force through it, and I'm like, this is the right thing to do, but I feel terrible about it.
That's what they say, kill your darlings, right?
Yeah. And she was a cool character, and she was helping and doing the right thing, and I would have felt worse about Petrichor. But you'll notice actually Petrichor in Hotspot's Hinterlands. She's in that book.
I'll just take a second look.
I haven't gotten to that contract yet.
She's stationed on Almatacin.
Oh.
So that was actually something that the Hinterlands book and Voidbreaker were sort of being written concurrently, and they asked me if I had a Skyfox character from Voidbreaker. It was about half written at the time. If I had a character from Voidbreaker that we could use on Almatacin, and I said yes. And so actually her bio there, I ended up writing so I didn't mess anything up for me. Yeah, she might make more appearances elsewhere in Almatacin based stuff.
It's exciting. It'd be fun to see her again.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that these characters are still out there, still doing things in a living, breathing world. So
I'm still going to call them suckerfish. So that's
that's
don't.
fine.
Sucker. I'm not gonna get that name right.
Petrichor is such a great word. That was one of the things. Like, I love the idea that the scientists are just like, what's the coolest word that's like barely pronounceable that has a really awesome meaning that we can just name a kid, right? In a Sibco. And like at the point where like the scientist casts are just like, what's the most absurd name we can get away with without somebody coming down here and giving us a trial of grievance? and Petrichor is probably on that list, but like Petrichor is actually like, some of if you got drawn like Petrichor in a Sibco, maybe they shorten it to Petra. I don't know. Did Clanners shorten names? I don't know. But Petrichor is a cool name, and it's got a cool meaning, and I didn't realize people had trouble pronouncing it in their heads, but she's cool. I don't know.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I literally
she's adorable.
Read something and was like, humans can smell Petrichor, which is the smell of like the earth after rain, or like.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is such a cool name for a Skyfox that is not just stuck on a ship. Like,
yeah.
I love that. Like, I definitely smiled when I got to like, oh, who's this person? Oh, Petrichor. Like, that is such a cool name. Well, Brian, do you have anything else that you'd like to tease or promote or whatever?
No, I mean, Voidbreaker's the big thing now. And I mean, Ilkon's Eyes Only. I wrote the opening fiction for that, so there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and it really sums up the state of the entire Inner Sphere, not just around Terra, sort of as a sum up of the opening phase of this era. And there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline from Catalyst as far as BattleTech. So always just keep an eye out. And I have no idea what the next thing coming from me is, but there's a lot of stuff I have in the pipeline, whether it's I've got some stuff with Ghost Bears, I've got some stuff with the Fox Patrol, I've got some stuff with there's more Ghost Dogs stuff coming if you've read any of the Ghost Dogs stuff. I really like those guys. Those guys are fun. And hopefully more beyond that. And like I said, the graphic novel that Mike Stackpole and I are working on, we just turned in our first the script for the first volume. So
awesome,
a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline.
And we have to wait for the artist to get that.
Yeah. The artist is Eldon Cowger, and his stuff is just great. And all of his preliminary like character work and everything that he's shown us so far for it's just terrific. So
that's awesome. That's so awesome. So Bryan, thank you again so much for coming on to the Mech Bay podcast for our episode to talk about Voidbreaker, because I was excited to read it, and I hope everyone else that picks it up this week is just as excited as we were as they read it, and they come onto the Discord and they talk about it and all the spoilers that we hopefully avoided.
And again, if you're listening and you want to discuss it further, probably next month, in the month of February, we'll do our book club, and we'll be doing Voidbreaker for our book club in February, so we can have an official chat about it then too.
And I'll do my best to join.
Awesome.
Bryan, that's great. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Bryan Young, for coming on to do our entire news section today. We would be remiss if we did not at least talk about our hobby progress, games played, tales from the hiring hall, even a little fan mail, and of course, a little bit of treat, our main subject for tonight. So, well, we should have asked what Bryan had done for hobby progress, but alas. Steve, have you made up for Bryan not talking about him doing hobby progress?
If Bryan loves Gaslands, then yes.
Who doesn't?
Gaslands. No, I do. I have quite a bit. So if those of you who are astute and have a memory a little bit longer than a goldfish, you'll remember that last time I mentioned that I was in progress of doing a Caesar, a Locust, a Marauder, Starslayer, Quick Draw. Those have all been finalized. I think last time we left off, all I needed to do was jewel the lasers and cockpits, and those have been done. So those are now finished.
Whoa, look at those. And you even brought me pictures to our audio-only format. I love it.
I know. We can now talk about them for all of our listeners to imagine the mediocrest painted Caesar you've ever seen.
I mean, I haven't really seen any painted Caesars, so yours is like the top Caesar I've seen, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of crabs, and I've seen a lot of guillotines painted, so...
Yeah, those are the new ones since last time we spoke. I did finish a guillotine and crab from scratch, so these are all done in my Mercenaries paint scheme, which is like I call it like a foresty gray or green. It's not like an olive green, but it's like a foresty green kind of.
Yeah, it's an earthy green.
Earthy green, and then I do shins and shoulders are brown.
Shins and shoulders.
Pits
and privates.
No, shins and shoulders, and then they all have a identifying badge that is red. That one's for courage, and yeah. So that's the Merc group that I'm painting, and really that's just to match the BSPs that I'd done previously.
Okay, I'm going to ask this. Where's my faction logo? Like,
I don't. So here's the problem. In the event, I mean, it will never happen, right? No, in the event that the Krusty Krabs decide to go bankrupt, the hope is that I can simply make a new Merc unit, and then I'll just paint what I need for the Merc unit, and it will still match the BSPs. Right? So all my PSPs will always match or BSAs, whatever we're calling them. My assets will always match my mechs, because that's something that bothers me. I just want everything to look together. And then I can always use it for an op for campaign day or whatever. So they're probably, I'll just paint things if I need them. And if I end up managing to get something from the hiring hall that I already painted, I'll just stick it in my army and it's already done,
Yeah.
I did start. So we talked about it last time. I salvaged that Black Knight.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Black Knight, mostly, it's getting there. It's mostly done. And I've started a Wraith. I did open my Savannah Masters box, so I've got my 2 little Savannah Masters that I'm painting. Not that I'll ever take them, but they got to get done. And I start.
They're great if you want. The Savannah Master is a hard sell, even as like an asset. Are they even an asset card?
They are. Oh, they're on. They're on
okay.
On the sheet.
I was like, boy, I hope they are an asset card. But like, they're a great stand-in for like Beagles, APC transports, like the light ones. I'm talking like 5-ton ones.
Right.
So I wish I had these like 2 years ago when I needed a whole bunch of Gabriel hovercraft.
Sure. Sure. But I had them. I'm painting them up. We'll see how they go. And I did start a Greyhound. So I have a Greyhound in my Merc colors.
You realize that, everyone who took a Greyhound went home with the trophy at Southern Assault, and you were like, man, I really want a trophy this year. Maybe I need a Greyhound.
I'll tell you what, I already have a Jade Falcon painted Greyhound. I have a Free Worlds League painted Greyhound, and now I'm just doing a Merc one. I'm just going through. We're just painting them all up. I like it. They're nice models to paint. They really are. They've got really nice deep grooves for washing, and they've got hard edges for edge highlighting. So I have a lot of fun with them.
Oh yeah, like it's sad because it's like the two best painted models I've done are probably my Greyhounds, and it's just because like it's a nice slow curve like armor panel, and like you said, the recesses are there. They're perfect for catching the wash. So it's like I've never been able to do such a nice gradient because there's nothing interrupted on the legs and stuff. Like
yeah, and you don't have a lot of greebles, so it's not like you've got bumps or grooves or little gears that you got to worry about. It's kind of like, all right, like
there's enough that a dry brush or a highlight is perfect, but it's the perfect amount of like edges to flats.
And no bits, no radar dishes that you got to try to paint around or anything else. But
I think Denim, he put a antenna on his, and I was like, well, now I'm jealous because mine doesn't have an antenna.
I still think the greatest hack I'd ever learned is you take a toothbrush bristle and you glue those on for your antennas, and they're flexible and they won't snap off. So you take a toothbrush bristle and you just cut it off and glue it on there. So you can find black toothbrushes. Look at the kids section. Look for a Batman toothbrush. And oftentimes the bristles
specifically the Batman one.
Black bristles are hard to find on toothbrushes.
No, I was about to say, it's like, do you paint those? No. You buy pre-painted black toothbrush.
Yeah, got to do it that way. And then we had a beautiful balmy day here in Detroit that was a whopping 24 degrees. So I broke out the primer and got Loki Mark II, a crossbow, and a carronade painted.
Carronade, yep.
And then I got I have now primed the last of my Gaslands materials. So my little buggies that I 3D printed and some gantries and some signs. So I'll finish those up in the next couple of weeks here.
You play any Gaslands yet?
Not yet. I'm ready. Look, I explained this last time. If I don't have a good looking board, I'll rephrase. If I have a good looking board, I'm more likely to have an exciting time because it will sell me on the immersion, right?
You got me. Yeah.
Because it's one thing to play a game and have fun. It's like, okay, I then like make a hard left turn around the Coke can. Like, okay, yeah, the Coke can's not selling it for me, but like the tire fire, that's legit.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Like, yeah.
Like this is why intro games for BattleTech should always be painted. Like you should always have a painted beginner box ready to go if you're showing it off. So yeah, I agree for Gaslands. If you already know you want to try, so you might as well make it the best first time experience.
Yeah. And the thing is, okay, worst case scenario, I don't, let's say worst case scenario, I don't like the game. I will have flexed my hobby muscle. I will have tried new things, painted different stuff, and
repurpose it for BattleTech Solaris.
That's it. We'll just make a Solaris terrain. And honestly, the other thing is I have to try to sell some people locally on Gaslands because like, okay, I've got some Matchbox cars. I'll give it a shot, but no one's like rip roaring ready to go. Not yet. People are kind of excited, but not yet. So the terrain is just as much for me as it is to ensure that other people will get immersed as well. So I can, play with them again later. So dual purpose.
I agree.
That wraps up just about everything that I've done over the last couple of weeks. How about you?
I've only done two things. I finished assembling that Nova Cat. So I did get the pliers out and tear the leg open again so I could put it back the correct orientation. They put arrows for the hip orientation, but not the knee and ankle and thigh orientation. So got to look real close at that art. No one would have noticed, but
you would have known.
I would have known.
You would have known.
Look, one of my favorite like hobby stories is when I invited one of my friends over to like assemble 40K stuff, and he was assembling like one of the orc stompas. He's doing it like, and he's talking. He's not like putting 100% brain power in. He's just assembling, and he starts like finalizing it, like putting the last touches of assembly on it. And he looks at it and he's like, I assembled the legs, they're both going left, like they're both left leg orientation. It's not like, so it was kind of awkward. Like he was like, I messed up, and I was like, oh well, so now we know it is the 2 left feet stompa, or
But I mean, for an orc stompa, that's pretty on point. I mean, they're stompas.
I mean, he was an orc player at the time, so it made a lot of sense mentally.
That's good.
But yeah, so I ripped the Novacat back. I finally fully reassembled it, put it on a nice 3D base. And then I posted a picture to the Mech Bay podcast Discord, and the designer of that variant, the actual designer of the model for Iron Wind Metals, Camo Specs Online, Ray White / Crackerbox, came on and was like, hey, thank you for posting a picture of this next to the plastic Novacat. It does appear to be bigger, because I was like, hey, this is a little bit wider. Like yes, I kind of upped the leg so it would have a more stand up look to it, but he was like, no, this is much bigger than what I had intended. So yeah, the Novacat Bs are oversized.
Not by much. I mean, I saw that photograph. It was noticeable, but I don't think it was enough that it would have.
It's not enough for a
difference.
Yeah, if for an Alpha Strike game, it's not going to be like, oh, this one's in cover and this one's not. Nothing like that. But it definitely looks more like an 80-tonner, like a good 80-tonner than
he had a
75
couple of cheeseburgers at the barbecue. Okay, he's just.
Hey, I love it even more now. I've got a big cat and a little cat.
Perfect.
Chonker, yeah.
Oh Lord, he coming.
Oh Lord, cinder block. That's what he is. So no. And then, of course, Crackerbox was like, hey, I noticed that you didn't glue the ER medium lasers into the chest because they come on a teeny little sprue and you have to glue them in. And I was like, no, I didn't forget those until you mentioned it. So thank you. I don't know if I'll put them on because I kind of like the vents that would be there for the Prime, but who knows?
The world is your oyster.
Yeah. The other thing I did was I glued my new Grenadier battle armor to a base, which I already had the pliers there from saving the Novacat's leg, so I pliered every limb on all 4 Grenadiers. So I've got one in a kneeling / semi-running position. I've got one with arms out and one with arms, running. Another one's just locked and loaded. It's kind of cool. And then I realized, because there's 4 of them on a base, normally I do 3, it looks a little crowded and you can't actually pick out all the details. So
what are they running from, Josh?
Nothing yet.
What are they running from?
Probably in the Novacat.
All right.
Probably the Novacat, the big Chungus Novacat. It's right behind them. They were like, we signed on to kill a 75-tonner, not an 80-tonner.
The extra 5 tons, it's all in the armor.
Mm-hmm. I did get my Great Death standard battle armor also glued. They are on a less scenic base, but what are you gonna do? They're Lyrans. They'll get over it. That's it for me for games played. So nothing major. No super priming like you did.
No games played. No. We're in hobby progress.
Yeah. So that's it for my hobby progress. No major painting or priming like you. Sorry, I move slow.
Look, when the weather strikes and it's balmy outside and you're in the low 20s, you got to strike, because otherwise I won't be able to prime until March maybe.
I love how you're it's above 32 degrees. I can prime. I'm like,
it's about humidity. You know what I mean? I can sit in my garage for 10 minutes and get some paint on models. That's fine, right? And I bring them all inside. So if any of you are out in colder weather and you want to try to prime, I find a well-ventilated, semi-warm space. My garage is warmer than outside, obviously, but I'm not going to prime in my house because that'll kill us. So I take all my stuff in my garage, and you can warm the can, either stick it under your armpit for a little while, or some recommend a warm bowl of water. You warm up the can, you put the minis in the box, you spray real quickly, and then you bring the mini inside almost immediately, so it's not out in the cold. And I've had no problems priming miniatures in the cold like that. Just don't let them outside. Don't let the can get cold. and I've had it all turn out okay. But the thing is, it's got to be dry and kind of warm-ish. I mean, I think the lowest I primed was like 20, and it worked out okay.
Gosh. You're the reason why the people put the instructions on priming cans. Like, do not do.
And the can recommends nothing below 60 degrees, and I'm like, okay, I can't prime for 8 months out of the year. I don't think so.
This was one of the major selling points of me getting an airbrush is I can prime inside at any time.
Yeah. I just don't have a dedicated hobby space I paint on my computer desk.
It's okay.
So it's like,
okay.
Yeah. We'll live. Look, my janky rattle can and respirator in my garage in the snowsuit. It's fine. I live. It works for me. And you can do it too if you need to, folks. Don't let Josh peer pressure you into getting an airbrush.
Hey man, mine was like rusted out and clear inside him, and I was like, yeah, sure, if it puts paint on.
If it works.
Let's move on to good old games played.
Yay.
Steve,
Games played.
Are you in a tournament right now?
Yeah, I signed up for Cameron Heat over at the MRC. This is put on by Sam, the spreadsheet wizard himself.
Doesn't that make the Samarin Heat?
That's funny.
Wait,
He'll get a kick out of that.
Wait, it's not actually Samarin Heat?
No, it's Cameron Heat. Cameron as in the Cameron family Star League. It's set in the Star League era. So we're all running
Star League era.
Yeah, that's it. But what's interesting about this tournament is you build a list and then you put it in the pile. And then you bid on what list you end up running for the tournament. So I bid and I won Clint's list. Clint's in our Discord. Clint, I owe you an apology. I'm sure this list is fine, but I'm not very good at this. And the games I'm about to report in no way reflect on your list building capabilities. It's user error, right? That's all on me.
Completely reflects on list builder.
No, but
we all know Steve is great at classic BattleTech.
I have never made a misplay in my entire life, ever.
Well, how'd your game one go?
So the first game I played was against Kaiserfalk. It was a capture the flag mission. My list that Clint built that I'm now playing is a Thug, a Shadowhawk, a Phoenix Hawk, a Mongoose, a Lightning Attack Hover Tank, and a Burke Defense Tank.
That is Star League AF.
Yeah.
That is SLDF AF.
And I played, like I said, I played Luke. He ran a Spartan, a Mongoose, a Hermes, an Ostrak, a Crab, and a Thunderbolt.
Okay.
Now
my brain is like, I own all these models. I have all these painted, and I'm like, tell me, you threw the Thug and just the Thug out and flanked with the Shadow and the Phoenix and the Mongoose, and then after things were wounded, you sent the Lightning in to like pick them off as the Burke just runs around throwing PBCs out, right?
So yes and no. This was a custom map put together for this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the MRC does is they'll sometimes make custom maps. And I have to assume that the reason this map was designed this way was to prevent people from jumping from woods to woods. But there was almost zero cover.
Oh, beautiful.
It was effectively level 1 depressions everywhere with swamp and jungle kind of placed around in mud. So there was no like safe cover. You couldn't get into heavy woods. You couldn't get into light woods. There was no woods. It was just mud and swamp. So if you went in there, there's a chance you're going to get bogged down. So you just never went in there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of had like weave your mechs around. My Thug ended up going basically up the middle so you could have the most visibility to try to catch the sprinters trying to get the flag and end up brawling. The Phoenix Hawk and the Shadowhawk went south to kind of flank upwards. The Mongoose and the Lightning went north to swoop around to grab the flag, and the Burke just did his best. Those
Burks do.
Yeah, they don't move very fast, man. They're like chug it. Now those 3 PPCs on a turret are a force to be reckoned with when your dice cooperate.
How'd your dice cooperate?
I don't know what I did to deeply offend Princess, but those dice have never rolled that. Like it's been atrocious. I mean, Luke will tell you that I was missing. Did I play perfectly? No. And this is important because I don't want it to come across as griping, right?
No.
I just couldn't hit anything.
Yeah.
I'm shooting on 7s, 8s. Yeah, I took some shots on 9s and 10s because there's no better options, and I don't expect to hit those. But when I miss an Alpha Strike into the rear of a Mongoose on 6s, I literally hit nothing.
Yeah, some days the dice just ain't there.
And what's interesting...
and it's definitely a feeling of like, I know if this was in person, I would have hit this. Like, my dice aren't this bad in real life.
Right. And the thing is, I think the reason that it bothers me so much, and I've been thinking on this a lot, why do I have such a bad... I have a much different reaction to Mega Mech games than I do to in-person games, right? Losing in-person games, never really fun, but there's always like hope that the next turn you can turn something around, you can kind of roll something, it'll be fine. And I wonder if it's the way that the information is presented from Princess in the report. You just kind of scroll through.
I hate the scrolling. I hate that it's all like as a like giant contract, and you have to read like, oh, you got screwed here. We use no lube on this mech right now, and you're dead, by the way.
Right, and the thing is, in person, when you're rolling individual hits and individual damage, you're like, oh, and the next one might hit the center torso. Ooh, my next shot might hit the center torso. Ooh, the next one might. Come on, let's see where it goes. And, by the time you get done, okay, you've missed everything, or maybe only got one hit where you needed to go, and it didn't really get the critical that you wanted. So, okay, there's next turn. But I think in Mega Mech, you just see it all right there. It's all black and white, and it's never good. So I ended up, I forget exactly what the score was, but I managed to grab a flag, score a flag, and I blew up a lot of his guys, right? It's just the Mongoose got clipped early, and the lightning went around a whole bunch and did quite a bit of damage. The Burke got an engine, or not, they got like an engine crit, so now the PPC stopped working.
Yeah.
Like that's a bummer. And my thug got pincered pretty bad because it just... the way the map was laid out, I didn't want to put this heavy mech into mud, right? So I ended up trying to snake my way through, and his Ostrok just got behind it, and I couldn't really turn around. Otherwise, I'd expose myself to the Thunderbolt that was over there. And it was like, well, he's going to go up in a blaze of glory. We'll see what he can take with him. And it wasn't as much as I needed.
As soon as I saw this, I was like, it's 4 mech on 6 mech. That's not...
Yeah.
There's no vehicles that can counterweight that.
Yeah. So it did not go great. Luke was a great opponent, and I felt bad for, hey,
it just happens. It happens.
It happens. And you're trying to gripe too much during the game because he's trying to win too.
Steve,
he's trying.
Are you a griper? All right, my next game. I got to do an introduction to Alpha Strike for a new couple that's starting to play BattleTech at our game store. So they had, of course, forgotten their Alpha Strike box at home. So thankfully, what I did was I took the list that I was going to teach them with, was roughly my Southern Assault list. So a bunch of Davian. I was like, it's a cadet cadre that it's perfect to teach. So I literally put out each mech as a pair. And I was like, pick one of each. Pick up. Do you want the gunslinger or the battle axe? And they were like, neither. We'll take the Black Knight. I was like, that's fine. So we all split it up. And I literally took my sheet and I cut it in half. And I cut all the cards out. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why people have cards.
It's amazing.
Oh yeah. So then I handed them over. And by the end of it, it was still, I had prepared to do a perfectly equal show everything, so it worked out perfectly because we each had 4 mechs, and we each had 3 vehicles, one of each type, and then an infantry. So it's hey, nice. You can learn everything about Alpha Strike in this one game. So
that's great. I normally start off just doing mechs on mechs for people because it's a little bit easier for them to grasp if they don't have any background in it. But it's nice that they could learn combined arms in one shot.
I feel like Alpha Strike just so much about showing off combined arms that if you're not showing combined arms like early on, like cool, hey, guess what? This hovercraft moves 16. It can drop guys out of it. Oh, your Black Knight moves the same as all the other of your mechs. Like,
Right.
once there's walking, there's jumping, that's it. But your tanks, they have turret, they can move, they've got all this special stuff. Here's infantry, they can anti-mech, they can shoot. So it was like, so I wanted to show that off, which is funny because the Alpha Strike box set does not have any infantry.
No.
So, but it's just a box set. That's fine. So I was explaining walking, shooting, all that. And I was like, okay, let's do first turn. And I was like, great, I lose initiative. That means I go first. So we do all the movement. And it's like, cool. We're going to declare shots and shoot. So I declared. I was like, okay, gunslinger against your Black Knight. It's perfect. Like, I've jumped. You're long range. I need an 11 to hit this Black Knight. I get a 12.
You needed the 11 to hit, and then you rolled the 12 for the critical hit for the cockpit.
It wasn't cockpit. It was fire control, thankfully.
Thankfully. It'd be a 10, yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, dice, calm down. It's an intro game.
Right.
So then I explained, okay, well, here's the critical hits table. Because they played Classic, so they were already aware of all that. And I was like, fire control is just anything that affects your weapon, essentially. So I was like, congratulations, your Black Knight is +2 to hit for now on.
Yeah.
But then I got to explain, like, standing still is -1. And then they interpreted, because they have more experience in Classic, like, oh, it's -1 for me to hit you now if you stand still. I was like, no, it's easy. You stand still, you aim. And they're like, oh, there's no -1s in Classic. I was like, yeah. But I had fun. I enjoyed, like, showing off, like, battle armor, like, jumping out and, like, anti-meching their hovercraft, their Maxims that flew by, and, like, getting the hit, and we're being like, oh, it hit. Now I got to roll motive. Oh, man, I blew one of your fins off, so you're degraded. Oh, I get the critical, but I roll nothing. So it's like, oh, all this fun stuff that is, like, so much faster happening than in the Classic game that they've been playing. So
right.
I think the wild part was when he jumped his Axeman in to try to fight my Valkyrie, and I was like, it's one pair. That's the difference. Rolls, misses. I was like, oh. But it was still a great game. We still had fun. They definitely whooped me with the vehicles. Like, their Maxim and Manicore they had just beat through, like, everything I had on that side. So my poor... What did I have? I had a Morningstar Command vehicle. It's got its wheels blown off. I was like, congratulations. Welcome to a mobilization. So,
yeah. Well, you'll see if you did a good job if they come back.
There you go. All right. Did you get any more games in for Cameron Heat or Samron Heat?
I got game 2 of Cameron Heat done.
Who made this list?
No, so I still played Clint's list. I'm still bringing my Thug, my Shadow, my Phoenix Arc, my Mongoose. So the whole list you play for the tournament is locked in. I had the privilege of playing Tweezer or Jeff from Coolant Pod podcast.
You're gonna die.
Oh, it was not good. It was not good. We were playing the breakthrough mission, so I had to cross the map, and he had to cross my map. Again, another custom map with a mountain range that kind of went directly through the middle of the map. He brought a Battle Master, a Marauder, a Hammerhands, a Kintaro, a Mongoose, and a Heavy Hover APC.
Whoa, another Hammerhands?
Yeah.
How'd the Hammerhands do?
Well, I'll tell you. It wasn't great. Yeah, so basically what ends up happening is I figure, okay, last time kind of got strung out, kind of got picked off a little bit. We'll just stay together in a clump, and we're just going to go. We're going to take the lightning attack vehicle and zip it around on the top, just try to avoid everybody and get in the backfield, right? Maybe throw a couple of support lasers and see if I can, like, sneak it off the back of the board if I need to. Good news is early on in the fight, his heavy hover APC skids into woods, like turn 1. Boom, immobilized. Fantastic, right? That's what I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all goes downhill from there, right? So I'm starting to move up. I'm trying to get my thug into position, my Phoenix Hawk, and he sets up a really nice feint with the, I believe it was the Kentaro that he put kind of on a level 1 hill, or on ground 0 with a level 1 next to it. So I'm like, I have to try for the kick. I have to try to kick it in the face. You got to take those opportunities when you get them. I missed. It didn't work. Nothing worked out that game the way that I wanted it to. His mongoose slipped past me and made it to the backfield and then walked off the board. And then he took a pot shot at my lightning, which had a TMM4 at the time. It was actually like he took a shot at it and it got hit and then got immobilized. Right. So now it's like now my light guy that could get off the field to make me points is stuck. My mongoose just didn't get there. So the slow trudge kind of became, at some point after the lightning went down and the mongoose went down, it's like, okay, my slow guys are not going to make it across the map, so I just have to try to prevent him from scoring.
Yeah.
And the Phoenix Hawk took a nap, and then it was like, okay, we're not going to win this, so now we just need to try to get as many battle points as we can. So we kind of hunkered down and we blew up some stuff, right? We killed the Hammerhands. The Marauder took so much damage. It was ridiculous. But I think we brought that down by the end of it, too. We finished off the Heavy Hover APC. But overall, Jeff just whipped me. And it was another one of those games where it's like you start missing on 6s and you're like, Princess, what did I ever do to you? I'm sorry I called you ugly.
I'm going to go with Clint cursed his list before he gave it to you. He was like, hey, I know the way that I will get my name announced multiple times in this episode by making a terrible list for Steve.
The thing is, the list is fine. It's got speed, it's got armor, and it's got a little bit of maneuverability in the Shadowhawk and the Phoenix Hawk. I mean, it's not a bad list. Either I'm just using it wrong or Princess really does not like me.
I mean, there's multiple of those options. Why not all?
D, all of the above.
Yeah.
But no, so I have one game left in Cameron Heat, and if I can link up with my opponent, I will report on that as well. But if you're listening, you should absolutely let me know when you can play, because they're free points. You'll just skyrocket at the top of the list. I'm a buffet. Come get your points.
To be fair, that's what happened with my last game that I played in MRC. It was like, I had to really struggle arranging when I could meet up and play them. And it's like, last minute, it's like, hey, we can do it now, or you can just take the win. And he won. And it was like, he scored like max points. I was like, see, that game, we didn't even need to play. Like, you could have just taken the points.
Yeah. Work's been wild. So
it be do like that.
They don't think it'd be like it be, but
it do.
So yeah, no, it's work's been bad. So it's like my availability has been limited. So I appreciate everybody else that has already accommodated my schedule. Thank you for that. And I hope you enjoy your free points you got as a reward. So Josh, you have any other games played, or are we moving over to
Tales from the Hiring Hall? Yeah, we move in there. Drinks are free there for winners.
Ooh. Oh man, it's okay. I got one of these too. How'd you do?
Well, the natural disasters, last we heard, was heading back from the Davian Raven area of space, the marches, with their tail tucked between their legs. I was about to say behind their legs, but tails are always behind the legs. That's how tails work. Don't laugh at me, Steve. I had to think about it.
Welcome to Biology 101.
So we made it back to the hinterlands, and we got a contract back on the old starter planet against a brand new mercenary company.
Ooh.
The Fighting Marmosets.
That's a name that will inspire fear in all.
Yeah. The company commander, Matt, and his Fighting Marmosets, they were rocking a 4.5 Thunderbolt NAIS and a 3.4 VSP Spider. So...
Oh, no.
Oh, no, indeed. I was like, that's a lot of shots that I don't want to play with. But we are contracted to steal some like parts and ammo out of some supply bins that they are guarding. And of course, they have not only the high ground, but they have 2 emplacements and a machine gun nest covering the like one place infantry would go. So it's a well-defended area. Now,
I'm curious how the machine gun nest did. I've never used one.
Never shot once.
Really?
Yeah, he had placed it so as long as I moved at full speed, I could get in and out of its range, like, and its arc. So,
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I looked at it and was like, I don't really mind the MG nest, but I can avoid it because he put it right next to his emplacement. I was like,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I was more worried about the medium emplacements because those are like, 12 damage in one shot. It's like, ugh. So I, before this game, hire a brand new pilot. So I've got the old Centurion pilot still, the 3-4.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got my brand new 4-5 fresh from the hiring hall pilot, which we've yet to name because, like I said, they have to play a game, they have to win and not die before I give them a name. So I'll give them all their backstory for next episode. So I'm not naming someone who's,
they're all fresh meat until they make it through.
Didn't pass the onboarding, what's the word? Probation period.
All right.
Hey, it's a meat contract world out there.
Ugh, gross. So how'd the game go?
Game went well. My Inferno with the new pilot starts rocking down the right side because it's really just one open area. We've got a little bit of forest, but it's like the Centurion goes wide. Like the 5-8 can still go through the mountain pass a little bit better than the Inferno, so I give that. And of course, because it's a new guy, I throw out the improved skill Bulldog, and I've got 1 light strike covering me because I'm like, all I need is a 6-up to hit a jumping spider. So if the spider takes a little damage, I'll throw the fighter at him. Turn 1, I throw a lot of missiles at emplacements. I don't think I hit really anything. Like even with the -4, I think me running and the distance, just the shots were bad. Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
It does. Turn 2, I get right next to his medium emplacement with the Centurion, and my Inferno and his Thunderbolt are within medium range. So it's about to go good. The Centurion spins up the Rack 5. He throws 5 rounds downrange at the Thunderbolt because he can't hit a jumping spider. One of those rounds hits the cockpit on the Thunderbolt.
Oops.
Matt rolls a 2 for his consciousness.
Nap time.
Which is, this is literally how my first contract game went, is 1 hit to the face, you're out. So his pretty much entirely fresh Thunderbolt goes down because I do 20 points of damage to it from the Rack 5 and a little bit of missile. So I'd done exactly 22 damage. Crashes down. A pilot unconscious, falling. Another pilot hit.
Oh, it's a great start to the game.
Yeah, so much fun. Of course, the spider the whole time is putting VSPs into the back of my Inferno and 3 ups. I was like, bro, you don't need 3-4 on the jumping spider. It's -3.
Yeah, but he's jumping, so it's +3. So now he just wants to hit, right? I get that. That's not a bad play, and it's a pest, right? It really is. It's going to get you.
To be fair, the pilot and skill roll doesn't affect your consciousness rolls, cadets.
It's true.
Gramps gets knocked out just as much as your Clanner Con 0-0. That's the tactic. So of course next turn I pretty much full speed the Inferno up. He wails on the immobile prone Thunderbolt. It's in a woods, but it's still like, hey, I've got a heavy PPC with minimum range 3. Bro, you're -4 to hit right now. I don't care.
Yeah, that's gotta hurt.
Yeah, I felt a little bad. I think on the turn he was down, I took out the Rack arm, and then the Centurion, because he's like, well, I don't want to be a dick, so he starts rooting around in a building. He of course finds one of the parts, so he's like, okay, well, I've started accomplishing my mission. Next turn, the Thunderbolt wakes up, gets up. I start to do the rock'em sock'ems. I blast him again with the Inferno. I hit the Rack 5 ammo in the right torso.
There it goes.
There it goes. So now he's got 2 pilot hits on top of his 2 pilot hits from the previous.
That's forced withdrawal.
Yep. This is where he rolls, where I'm like, hey, you got to roll consciousness because like everything's still happening. He passes out again. I was like, what if we said your ammo ejection system, not ammo ejection, but your auto eject system was on? So we say he ejects to spare him from the 5th pilot hit where he crashes and hits the ground. So we do the roll.
Sure.
I'm like, hey, you're already unconscious. We already rolled that. It's an automatic ejection. We do all the modifiers. What's behind you? Water? Great. He gets an 11.
Drowns.
He gets an 11. He
Okay.
yeah, so he
You
does
drown
eject.
this poor
And I
man's
literally
pilot.
was like, all right, well, he ejects into the space behind him. So the rushing river. And I was like, all right, you give me a 4 up to see if he's face up or face down.
Jeez.
No, I wasn't that bad. But I was like, hey, your pilot's not dead and I can't capture your pilot. So at that point, he's like, well, all I have is a spider. So now I have to really attack you. And I was like, no, retreat. And his spider jumps and it starts chasing the Centurion. And the Centurion wins initiative the next turn. He jumps into heavy woods. The Centurion moves point blank into his rear, and he's like, spins up the rack 5, puts it, hits it. I was like, that is your XL engine on the spider. Right torso, like not thankfully not destroyed.
Centered. Yeah, you didn't wreck this man's whole career, but
yeah. So yeah, he was like, it was one of those games where it felt bad because his emplacements, I think, hit once and they should have hit more. But also there's nothing you can do when you pass out on the first roll.
Nope. Sometimes the dice betray you.
Mm-hmm.
Less often than
There's
Princess.
a lot of
though.
that this week.
Yeah. Dice were not very nice.
Yeah. So because this was the starter contract, I was like, well, I'm not going to modify this too much. Also, I'm only rep 2 at this point. So I did have a 70% salvage. So
Nice.
I think because I held the field, this is my first time holding the field, actually. I am going to salvage the Thunderbolt because I have a brand new plastic Thunderbolt in AIS.
Nice.
So it's a little bit more risky, but I think we'll fill out to 4 mechs next week.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Growing the company.
I know.
I love
Gotta
it.
hire another person.
Yeah. I was in a very similar boat. I was down to 3 pilots, so I needed to pick up a couple. I picked up one. I might pick up another. So I'm sure that, news correspondent Chip Darrington will have something to say about this, but I played the second track for the 3rd month of the contract on Alina with the Night Owls. I played Chris Jr. again. He came out. He wasn't sure he was going to make it, so I'm glad he did make it, and I got to fight the Battle Crushers once again and finish off the contract. Now, because this contract took place immediately after the previous fight, I thought it would be fitting to bring the same Caesar and the 2 Manticore Heavy PPCs that all survived the previous engagement. So these are the same folks that were trying to hightail it out of the zone that were in the zone prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
He brought a Wraith TR1 and a Guillotine 5M and 2 J. Edgar hover tanks. So again, with these J. Edgars that are just hounding me the whole time. Now, deployment for his defense was anywhere within 10 hexes of his starting edge. Chris decided that it was going to be a good idea to deploy everything as far up as he possibly could.
Of course.
And I'm like, if that's what you'd like, we can do that. So my Caesar the whole plan is just march down the field. Again, this is like another breakthrough mission. But when I played Jeff, it didn't go very well. This one went significantly better. So basically his Wraith didn't move very far on the first turn, and all my Manticores and my Caesar were in great shape to just light them up.
Yeah.
So we did. And on the first turn, I put, I think, 15, maybe 22 damage on that right torso of the Wraith. And it was like, the Wraith doesn't have that much armor. It's only got 18 armor.
The Wraith is a light medium.
Yeah, it's got 18 armor in that. It was the left torso. I'm sorry, I misremembered. It's the left torso, 18 damage, or 18 armor. So I was internal on turn 1 on that left torso. I didn't get any critical hits, which was a huge bummer. But it was real rough for that Wraith to start. And he got a lot more cagey after that. We went through, and ultimately on the first turn, I lost a Manticore, which was a bummer because those guys put out so much damage.
They're good vehicles, nice. Steve.
Well, no, I mean
they're all good vehicles.
They are. They absolutely are.
I like how you're on the Manticore train and I'm on the Bulldog train.
They're good. They're real good. The Manticore, the heavy PVC Manticore moves 4, has a threshold of I think it's 5, but the check number is 10 to start. So it's like they're tanky as hell. And they do 15 damage in one hit. That's how I got the Black Knight last game, right? I just hit it in the face, and I got a free Black Knight. The game mostly consists of my Caesar marching down the field. I'd gotten him on a pretty decent trajectory, so he could make the walk without too many turns. So he was making it 4 hexes a turn, right? With 1 or 2 turns as necessary to get around trees or whatnot. But this game actually went surprisingly long. It ended up going 9 turns out of a possible 10.
Man.
On turn 4, I managed to put a Gauss to the center torso of that Wraith, and it finally put it down. I'd scattered some damage there the first couple of turns, but that Gauss rifle just went straight internal, and that was the end of that. So we cored out the Wraith. Again, non-salvageable. So the Battle Crushers are now down 2 of their mechs in unsalvageable condition, and I stole their Black Knight. So there's really just this last this guillotine that really is all that left in the Battle Crusher roster. And at the same turn on turn 4, my Caesar shut down because of heat. I failed the heat shutdown roll. So now my Caesar's standing still. His guillotine shoots it, of course, hits it. I fall over. And the next turn, the guillotine bonks me in the head with a medium laser, which didn't feel great.
There are worse things to bonk guillotines in the head with.
That's true.
Guillotines themselves.
I lost my second Manticore. I did manage to kill his 2 J. Edgars. So now it's just down to my Caesar and the guillotine. And this is where things go kind of bad for Chris. The guillotine starts. I get a hip crit on the guillotine.
Oof.
Now it's starting.
Yeah.
He's starting to fall over.
Mm-hmm.
And he's starting to take head hits and failing seatbelt checks. He's still awake, but he's not doing so great.
Mr. Krabs, I don't feel so good.
Right. But the last 4 turns, he keeps taking these piddly J. Edgars, and they're zipping right in front of my Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's using their maneuverability to put them right in front of my Caesar. So I have to turn, walk, turn again. He's slowing me down. I should have been able to get off the map on turn 7, but he dragged it out another 3 turns because, I should have I've been off on 7. Instead, I had to stay and fight. I should have been off on 8, had to stay and fight. I managed to get off at the end of 9, but I ended up getting off on 10 because we shot on turn 9. So I went the full length of the game. But I mean, these Jaggers just kept getting in my way until I started parking myself next to them, and then I'd shoot, and then I would kick. Right, I'd risk the kick with the increased PSR on the heavy armor, the hardened armor, but kicking those J. Edgars seemed to be really effective because they had a tendency to explode after that. But his poor guillotine fell down 4 times, and in the last turn, I shot him. He failed his PSR. He fell down, and I just walked off the field at the start of 10. And I'm like, I'm out. Goodbye. Right? No more. So we left his guillotine pilot alive. Both Manticores ate it, and I killed 3 of his 4 units. And the Krusty Krabs have made it off of Alina. And now I have the most difficult choice ever. I have to pick a Jade Falcon mech that I get to add to my mercenary unit, and I don't know what to pick.
Ooh. All the world is your oyster.
Well, it's like you can pick an Ion Sparrow, you can pick a Nightjeer, you can pick
Jade
Phoenix. Well, that's just it. Like Jade Phoenix A is so good. Why would you not take it? Or I could take a Hero Falcon. And like I'm looking for a couple lighter mechs that I can pair with things like my Caesar or my Quick Draw that are like, I need lighter, low cost units so I can like slide them in for more units on the field. But I don't know. I'd hate to take the Ion Sparrow and see it explode in the first game it's in, but we'll have to do some practice. But we have to decide. We have some time before we have to head back to the hiring hall and make another decision. But overall, went well.
That's good.
Went well.
All right, Steve. That was fun. That was real good. I liked that they were thinking about blocking your movement because that shows some pro gamer moves. Unfortunately, it also shows they didn't read the rules section for the assets under stacking limitations, which by far are my worst rules. Like, I hate stacking limitations, but this came up in my game against Joshua Franklin last time, so we actually knew. But it specifically says all non-assets can move through a hex containing one or more assets. In other words, assets do not hinder the movement of enemy units as long as some standard stacking limitations apply. So you can't put 3 asset vehicles in a hex. You can't put like 2 mechs or 1,400 infantry. Like, so you can walk through assets. They can't block you because you just can't end there.
Fascinating. Yes, Chris Jr., you should have read the rules because to do otherwise would have led to strange shenanigans, and definitely not my fault for not reading that rule. Anyway,
okay, it's classic. I don't expect your brain to go to the rule book.
No, it's a mess. But no, good to know for next time. But it worked out for me okay, and I got to kick some J. Edgars, so I'm not going to complain too much.
Poor J. Edgars.
Look, they got in my way. They needed to die.
The Hoovers. You're kicking the Hoovers.
They deserve it. Yeah. So that was my game, and that's a good rule to learn. Actually, we had another thing happen at the game shop that night. This was not my game, but I think this is a perfect example of how everyone gets really excited when cool things happen in BattleTech. So my buddy Kevin was playing a game against Rico, and Rico had an archer that was sitting near the back. And this was a meeting engagement, so someone had to die. And I believe it was Kevin's Chameleon put a shot. It was an SRM. So if the Chameleon doesn't have an SRM, it was his, I don't know, whatever else he ran.
It's a mech. A mech did a thing.
It did a thing. He shot an SRM-6 and put one of them right into the cockpit and got a critical hit with that SRM, and criticals hit slot 3, which is, of course, the cockpit. So, this was Rico's first game, and first game for the mercenary campaign. And we're like, hey, there's this rule about skin of the teeth ejection. You should use that. And yes, we know that in the rule book it states explicitly that skin of the teeth doesn't apply if you critical hit the cockpit slot. Like it's right there at the bottom of the paragraph in TAC Ops. It says you can't do it. But being Rico's first game, we said, look, the odds are bad anyway. You're going to have to roll like a 10 up, or I think in his case, I think we did the math. I think he had to have a 10. And we're like, look, he's probably dead anyhow, but you get to try.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. I mean, just make the roll. He's like, okay. Because he was like, man, this is like my good 3-5 pilot, and it's my first thing. And we're like, just roll. All right. Guy rolls boxcars. So his pilot shoots out of the back of that archer and lives. So
crowd goes wild. The store cheers. There's beers all around.
There were, because we have a bar in our game store, and all the MTG nerds in the back looked up when like we had probably 8 people there. All the BattleTech people just jump up down and go, yeah, and they all look over like, what just happened? And we're like, mind your business.
Eat your cardboard, nerds.
Right? Yeah, nerd. Yeah, for us to say, but no. It was a hoot. It was a lot of fun, and to see a skin of the teeth work was great. And then, of course, it really softened the blow that he just lost an archer, and he got to keep his pilot. And Kevin was kind enough to ransom the ransom the mech back to him. Mostly because Kevin does not like archers.
I mean,
he's like, I got this great
trap. Yeah,
but
I'm not
I don't want
throwing
this. But it was fun, and it just goes to show that, like, you know, it is exciting when mechs blow up and you get to make fun rolls. So that was fun.
I'm enjoying more of the making the story for this than I am following all the rules, but it's like, what would be cooler? Okay, if I eject here or skin a teeth there or throw 2 punches here, like the non-optimal rule, bend the rules for the fun part.
Yeah, and as long as both players agree, it's not the end of the world.
No.
And so what? I mean, with this being the first track of his first contract, say his pilot had died, he'd just scrap it and make a new company with the exact same mechs and the exact same pilots with the exact same names and stats, and no one would have batted an eye. So let him roll. What's the harm?
Let him roll.
With upcoming events, I signed up for Brawl in the Bluegrass.
Hey, so that's
going to
2 of
Kentucky.
us.
Yeah. Maybe we'll bring home a trophy. Maybe.
There's now
Probably not.
It went from an 80% to an 85% chance of a trophy.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well,
yeah.
It just means you can win the Alpha Strike one. I can win the Classic one.
We will try.
Boys are back in town that they've never been in.
No, I've not been to Lexington.
No. And a new event that just got brought to our attention. We have the Richmond City Open in Richmond, Virginia, and they've got Battletech, both Alpha Strike and Classic, and like a grinder event. So they've got like 8 different Battletech events for the convention, and that is May 2nd through the 4th. And you can find the link to that at the Richmond City Open website. Alrighty. So we got some fan mail, though. Let's roll that out the HPG, which just started working for some reason.
For no reason. All right. So looks like...
Is this a list? This is a list. Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is from Hard Luck. Hard Luck writes, "Hey, MechBay, you've done a number of battle value reviews, and I thought you might like an Alpha Strike 375 list review. I love the podcast and have been learning... I love the podcast and have been leaning on my son to listen for ideas. Please keep up the great work and spread the Battletech joy." And they have a Clan Ghost Bear Jihad list.
I'm looking at it. It's not bad. It's not my normal playstyle. I see a lot of things I like, and I see a couple things that I would probably change.
Well, that's because the Clan Jade Falcon player can't look at a Ghost Bear list and see the same thing.
Look, but we're just going to steal their children, okay? And then we're going to move on with our lives.
I feel like I've seen this same style list enough that it's not an issue. So Hard Luck has a Marauder 2C7, Shadowcat C, Hellbringer A, Viper A, Mislinks B, 2 Rogue Bear Heavy Battle Armor, and then they've got their support / Striker Cavalry Lance with 2 Balak Strike VTOLs and 2 LRM Carrier Cs. Ugh.
Yeah. There's a lot to be scared of in this list. That Marauder 2C7 is a 775 for 56 points. It only moves 6 inches, but it does have flak and ECM.
And I mean, it throws 7 dice at medium.
It does. And
like, you don't have to move this. You put it on the field. You move it 0.1 inches onto the table, and it sits still, and it can do 5 out to long, and it does the flak for the 5 the whole way.
Yeah, it does. Like I said, this is something that I would not put in one of my lists just because it's not my style.
But it's not bad. It's not bad.
No, it is not bad. Don't mistake me at all. I just tend to play a little bit more mobile. I don't normally take movement 6 units unless it's a big, beautiful Drakina, and that's a different story.
If take the Marauder 2C7, swap it for a Drakina, same stats, would you take it?
In this list, probably not.
Just because there's not enough fast stuff, or not enough slow stuff, or not enough tanky stuff.
So I don't think there's enough tank. And it seems weird to say, hey, let's get rid of an assault because there's not enough tank. I would try to do more heavies, right? I would rather swap a medium and an assault for 2 heavies if I needed to do that, because I think you're going to benefit overall. And that's just a gut feeling. Like, The Shadowcat C runs 16, jumps 12. It's Omni. I have to assume they're carrying one of the battle armors. And I assume the Dragonfly Viper A is carrying the other.
Yeah.
I don't really love the Loki A.
It's definitely not the best variant of the Loki. You're paying for probe, you're paying for recon, you're paying for essentially a little bit of everything. But I understand why they have both of those. It's because both the Shadowcat and the Hellbringer both have standard narcs. You got 2 LRM carriers. So this is, lo and behold, a clan narc list.
You've also got the Koshi that has SRM2 as well. So it's going to be a little bit there also. But that Loki A, you're going to pay a lot for. I mean, it's a 444. With the 5 long range on the Marauder 2C7, I don't think you need the long range on that Loki. And you're paying points for it. I'd much rather bring a Loki B. If, again, I don't know the Ghost Bear list or the MUL, so I don't know what's available.
Assume general clan.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably the Loki B. You're going to save yourself 8 points, and you're going to drop that long range, and you're going to lose all your Omni Probe recon stuff. But you know, if he's taking it specifically for the narc benefit, then that's one thing. But with the narc on the Shadowcat, I don't know. Those are the 2 choices that I think I would make different. I love the Dragonfly, love the Shadowcat. Mislinks is great. I mean, 440 with SRM, recon, probe, jump weak, or I mean, not weak. Weak's not a benefit, but you know what I mean. You're able to jump, right? For 35 points is a steal, right? And those Rogue Bear heavy battle armor I've never seen before, but they're kind of gross. They're 4/4 jump, and it's 3/2/0.
Yeah, you essentially get those for 1 turn because they are only going to be TMM 2 at the max.
Yep.
So,
but if they're mounted and they come off 3 at short range, if you can get, so let's just assume you get the Dragonfly in somebody's rear arc, you dump your Rogue Bear, it's going to be 3/4 damage from the Dragonfly, assuming you don't overheat for 2, that would bump it up to 6. Then you're going to get 3 from the Rogue Bear plus 1 for your rear. So you're looking at, if you overheat the Dragonfly, 10 damage in the rear. I mean, that's a ton. Those Rogue Bears are dropping someone's rear arc and have a bad day.
True. So my thoughts on this list are, it's good. It's got the good ends of the spectrum of what you're trying to do. Like, you've got narc and you've got more than 1 narc. So good points on that. I like the Marauder 2C. It's super damagey and super tanky. And I've taken things roughly 50 plus BV. Like, my Gunslinger did less damage and had roughly the same armor, but didn't have as good as what you have here. So, like, good job for that. My problem comes actually with the support. I don't feel like the Balax are doing enough for what you're paying for them. They're 34 points each.
I mean,
with
TMM5, the thing is, it's like 22 at 22 movement with VTOL, you don't need to worry about terrain as much. So you're basically going straight over wherever you want to go for 22 inches, which means it's basically the entire map. 3 damage in a rear arc makes 4 damage. That's pretty good.
My problem is you've got like the weird TMM curve of the easy thing to shoot is nothing. So whatever they're going to see, they're just going to focus, and you don't have enough armor on the Shadowcat, the Hellbringer, the Dragonfly. Like, you better win initiative, or you better win on like which side of the board, because turn 1, the Marauder 2C7's not dying, and they're probably not going to shoot the Balax, and your LRM carriers are playing the hide behind a building game. So they've only got 3 targets to hit, and TMM 3 jumping, TMM 2, TMM 4. Like, Shadowcat's dying first, then the Hellbringer, then the Viper. Like,
that Koshi may go too. Even with TMM 3, it's only got 3 health.
I always forget the Koshi. Yeah, because that's only TMM 3 light, and that's 4 damage on light. Yeah. You know what?
It's like
I'm between what dies first, Shadowcat or Koshi. I'm going to go with whichever one moves last.
I mean, if they were smart, they'd probably go for the Shadowcat just because it does a little bit more damage and it has the narc.
So I say trade. I know you want to do the narc. Everyone wants to do narc. Everyone thinks it's fun.
It is fun.
One ECM stops you. A single ECM counters.
Yeah, well, then you just kill the ECM.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's my thought. It's like, build a better middle. Like, I'm not saying they're bad, but like 2 Balax, you probably don't need 2 Balax. Trade one of those. 34 BV gets you another mech. In fact, you probably could drop the skill on the LRM carriers and get yourself another little bit of points.
I mean, honestly, so
they're not going to move. They're going to be skill 5. So now they're parked skill 4. Oh, narc. So extra damage.
I would say if I were to run this list, if I were to change a couple things, I'd swap the Loki A for a Loki B. I'm actually going to disagree with you. I like the Balax. I don't think they're bad. And 34 for 3 short, which they're probably going to be in, is a fine trade, especially for a TMM5. I'm not a huge fan of LRM carriers, truthfully.
It's because you pay essentially for the damage twice.
Yeah, that's just me. I mean, they're 27 points, which isn't terrible.
Honestly, just take your new Kraken / Bane, then direct fire one for the same price.
Yeah, and that's just me. I'd have to see this on the table, how it plays out. I think there's a lot of long range damage that isn't going to get utilized.
I've fought multiple of like lists like this, and that's what happens. It's like, you don't give me a good target that moves fast enough, and it's going to slowly wither away. That's my thing. It's like, I'm not going to shoot the VTOLs. They're too fast. I'm going to shoot the very squishy mediums. And I just need to get lucky.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with VTOLs. You have to make sure you place them in the right way, because if you're not in rear arc, you're probably in short. And even if the TMM5, if I've got a skill 4, I'm shooting on 9s. I just need 1 to immobilize you. That's it.
Yeah, I don't actually like lists that overdo VTOLs because of that. Like, you're good until you're not good. It's
not bad.
Are you feeling lucky?
Yeah, I mean, two VTOLs isn't bad. I wouldn't bring more than that. Yeah, I think it's again, hard luck. It's a fine list. I'm not trying to say it's bad.
He's already trying to say it's bad.
I didn't say that.
You've said it multiple times. I'm going to cut.
I said it's not.
I'm not
bad.
trying. I'm just going to say, like, I'm.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to listen to this episode and see if you edit out all the nots that I said, and I just keep saying it's bad. It's bad. It's a terrible list. I hate it. No, it's a fine list. I think you're leaning a lot on Narc for extra damage, and I don't think you have enough armor. That's just me.
Quit sending us Narc list, folks.
Or keep doing it. We'll just keep repeating it. That's fine.
All right. Well, Steve's voice cracks. We'll take a quick break and then get into our main subject.
Good evening. I'm Chip Darrington. An update on the situation on Alina. Reports now confirm that the raiding force has been identified as the Krusty Krabs. Disaster struck when the remaining elements of the Battle Crushers moved to stop the crab escape. The remains of several combat vehicles and a wraith torn to pieces tell a violent story with a sudden end. It appears that once again the Krusty Krabs have escaped justice. The Krabs have seemingly made off with Alfred von Mason's Black Knight as it was captured on satellite imagery being loaded into the Crab dropship, along with at least one other mech of Jade Falcon design. While their projected whereabouts are unknown, it is presumed that the Krabs will not remain idle for long. Chip Darrington, signing off.
All right, we're back. So in the spirit of the opening scene of Voidbreaker, which you can read for free on bleedingcool.com, we wanted to go over how to recreate jumping out of a VTOL and landing on a building.
It's doable.
Yeah, I was like, this is a simple rules exercise, right? This'll add like 10 minutes onto an episode.
Yeah, there are a couple of complicating factors we need to talk about.
Yeah, there always are. Steve, have you ever jumped out of a plane / VTOL and hit a target?
I have.
Whoa.
Yeah, I went skydiving.
Oh my gosh. Me
my wife
too.
at the time, who was not my wife, she said, I want to go skydiving. And I said, we'll see. So I took her skydiving for her birthday. She had a great time. It was fine. I don't think I'll do it again.
I loved it. It was great. It was the most relaxing I've ever felt.
It was cool. It was absolutely cool. Being you have that feeling of weightlessness while you're in free fall.
That's the best feeling.
It was wild. I mean,
gravity no longer affecting me. At least I feel like it's not affecting me, but it's actually really affecting me.
It was loud, man. That was the thing that shocked me, is how, like, it makes total sense. You're out of a plane. You're in the sky. You're falling. Obviously, there's going to be wind racing past your ears. But for whatever reason, Steve didn't think about this before he got out of the plane. So I was like, oh, it's loud. But it was cool. And then you pop the chute and then you just float. That was cool. Once the chute opened and the fear of like splatting into the ground is gone.
That's when the fear came back for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude, the chute's open. You're good now. Now it's just landing.
My instructor was like, hey, you seem really calm once the chute deployed. And he was like, do you want to do spins? I was like, sure. So we just like,
did a bunch of.
Yeah, like you're horizontal to the ground instead of vertical orientation.
That's
so
wild.
Yeah. But it was fun. Will I do it again? Probably not. But
probably not. It was cool though.
I did it once. That's all that matters.
Check the box on the bucket list.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 15,000 feet, and then you got about a minute of free fall. And then the chute opens at about 5,000 feet, and then it's like 10 minutes of waiting to get down. You're like, all right, I'm done. Can I go home now?
Yeah.
Can't make this go any faster? No.
And when you first jump out of that plane, that 9.8 meters per second really feels wild. And then it stops. And then it stops. You're just kind of floating. You're like, well, this is cool. But yeah, that acceleration is something else. It's a rush.
Alrighty. But Kenja Rodriguez also jumps out of a plane in Bryan Young's hit new novel, Voidbreaker. How would Kenja Rodriguez do this in Alpha Strike?
So I had to sit down and go over all of the embarking, disembarking rules, right?
So much fun. The best.
Well, I mean, is it doable? Absolutely. So there's some conditions that Kenja Rodriguez would need in order to jump out of a VTOL. As everyone knows, or maybe not, if not, I'll explain it to you. Normal ground transport using internal transport numbers or cargo, right? Infantry can dismount, and they use one half of their non-jumping movement to end the transport movement. So if I park my truck and my guys jump out and they have foot 2, they can move 1 inch after exiting the car.
Sounds right.
Ground transport using Omni and Mech, so we're talking battle armor, right? Are the exact same, except you can use jumping movement. So if I have elementals in an APC, they cannot get their jumping bonus if they're exiting the APC. But if they're coming off a mech, they can use their jumping movement, and they still only half.
Or the APC is Omni, and they're not riding in; they're riding on.
Right. Or is the same with XMech, right? XMech can do that too.
Yeah.
Airborne gets a little different because now we're talking C-130s, right? Those airplanes. You've got to use internal transport cargo to transport those things.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to dismount regular armor or regular, infantry, it has to land, right?
Makes sense. I mean,
yeah, right. We're going to throw 35 guys out the back of the plane, and maybe 2 of you will survive the landing, and then you can go on your mission. Yeah, we're not talking about the
pilot sees the bill, and it's like, your mission: deliver 35 troopers to this coordinate. Gets above coordinate,
dumps them out.
Jumps them outdoor. Plane tilts up.
Look, the contract said nothing about having these soldiers viable once they got there. Okay,
contracts.
Devil's in the details. All right. So airborne transports using IT and cargo. If the unit has paratrooper or jump movement, they can get out of the vehicle while it's still in the air. Elevation doesn't matter. Is it airborne? Yes, then they can get out. If it's airborne, no, then you have other things, but they can still disembark, right? But if it's got paratrooper or jumping, you can get out of the back of the plane whenever.
Whenever, or at the end of the?
I'm sorry, at the end of the movement.
So the plane has to stop moving, and then they can get out.
Yes, the airplane moves, ends its movement, and then if it's got paratrooper or jump jets, they can get out the back of the plane.
Okay.
There's an optional rule. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. There's an optional rule called zipline drops. Zipline optional rule operates the same as what we just talked about, the airborne disembarking, but you can get out anywhere along the transport's movement path, and it's a drop, not a dismount. So there's a drop roll you have to make, and there's a possible chance of scatter and damage, right? So it's an optional rule. Some people like it, some people don't, but just clarify that with your opponent before you play. But know that if you want to get cheeky with it and you want your plane to fly over an objective and drop dudes, you need that zipline rule active.
Which I think is funny. Like, I would assume the zipline would be lower, like lower chance of scatter and everything, because like
you're tethered to it,
yeah,
rather than flying on a parachute.
I don't know. The zipline to me is the people coming out of the Black Hawk helicopter, not parachute jump people. Like, I feel like one of these is much more riskier than the other, but
yeah. Now, the other thing to note is if you are going to use the zipline optional rule, those zipline dropped units cannot make an attack that turn, but they do gain TMM of 3. It replaces their regular TMM, but they do get a TMM of 3 because they're dropping out of the zipline.
Okay, all right.
It's kind of cool, but that's really it. I mean, Alpha Strike is a pretty straightforward thing there, but can Kendra Rodriguez jump out of a plane? If she has paratrooper special ability, then yes, she can jump out of the VTOL.
And she did have a parafoil, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Well, there you go. So she could do it.
Yeah, it was definitely a low opening, but she could do it.
We'll label this one plausible.
Anything else or anything special that you found while researching Alpha Strike VTOL disembarking rules?
No, I mean, it's like if you read this section, it's pretty straightforward, but I did want to double check myself because there are errata that come up all the time. So I went to Joshua Franklin just to make sure that I had my notes straight for the episode. And I asked him like, hey, what about embarking, right? Like we get off planes. That's cool. But like, if I got jump jets, can I like jump up into this plane? Can I jump up to the helicopter? Can I use my VTOL and get up there and jump in? And yeah, his response was not positive. I think I asked a question that was, he said, new rule, VTOL infantry are now banned. It's just, they're all banned, no more. But I suspect he was joking. But so no, you cannot in Alpha Strike get into a flying unit.
Further on in Voidbreaker, possibly, perhaps, maybe. Well, Steve, thanks for checking with the experts on getting into VTOLs while also flying.
Look, after the last episode, when I mentioned that I crippled a unit by kicking someone in the back, the Discord lit me up for not reading the rules properly, so I had to make sure these were kind of tip-top. So I hope I got them right this time. If I got anything wrong, I'm sure you'll let me know.
Hey, crippled, the status effect only cares about front armor. Rear armor is free.
I know that now. Thanks, everyone.
Send your hate mail specifically to Steve.
I can take it. All right. What about Classic, Josh? Alpha Strike is a pretty boiled down version. I'm sure you only had to read 3 chapters to figure out how to disembark from a VTOL in Classic.
Gosh, I wish.
In 4 books?
3 chapters, 4 books. And I'm like, why am I doing this for like a 10-minute segment in a filler part of an episode? The main part was the interview. So you know what?
Because the people need to know. And we're an educational podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, I've only taken a VTOL with transport infantry once, and that was fully like me landing. And of course they immediately shot that. And it was like, why would I do that? Yeah. So, but I've got more classic tournaments this year, and I was like, well, maybe I'll do some fun tricks that I do in Alpha Strike in classic. And I also wanted to see in a classic more hard-coded rules sense, could Kendra Rodriguez do what she did? Now, just like for Alpha Strike, mounting, an infantry unit must spend all of its MP to enter the carrying transport. And it may only mount at the end of the carrier's movement. So the VTOL would have to be normally landed, have to, quote, move, and then Kendra would get on. I was like, okay, this is fine. While getting on, Kendra cannot shoot, spot, or do anything else while getting onto the VTOL. I'm like, that's pretty standard. She's buckling herself in. She's not spotting. She's not shooting. She's not doing anything. That's fine. I'm going to jump to dismounting now. An infantry unit may dismount a carrier only during the movement phase at the end of the carrier's move. So the carrier has to move all the time first. This is where Mega Mech really screws us up, because we're always like, I move it, I hit done, and then I want to press the infantry get out button. But that's not how it works. Yeah. Like in the sense of like, it's not how the button pressing works. You have to get out. Like you move and then press get out. You don't hit done first.
Oh, okay. That explains a lot of my problems.
Yeah.
I don't do well with Mega Mech. Mega Mech does not like me.
It's because Mega Mech follows the ABCD SOP of the rules. And
I know.
When we just know what we want to do and we just do it. So
I want an oopsie button. I want like a undo the last thing you just did button in Mega Mech. Just give me a...
We need Mega Mech Clippy.
Yeah. Oh my God. It looks like you're trying to siege an objective. Would you like some help with that?
Yes, I would, please. So dismounting, that's fine. The VTOL moves and Kinja hops out. Now, infantry units with jump MP may dismount from a VTOL that has not landed, so still in the air, regardless of elevation. Doesn't matter. You place the infantry on the ground in the hex, occupied by the VTOL. So no like sailing around. I thought that was the sad part. And if they're battle armor units that have anything, so Kinja's not battle armor. I almost want to say she was power armor, but she's really just regular infantry.
She's just wearing a black suit.
I know. It made me sad. I wanted cool clan stealth, airy power armor or whatnot.
That would make noise and come up on mag scans. She's a spy trying to sneak in.
Know. But I did think it was fun. This is where like Intersphere standard, they can't jump until they they eject their SRM packs or whatnot, because they're not as good as elementals. They have to eject the SRM packs first, then they can jump out. So no jumping with the full SRMs.
Got it.
Your poor Draconis Combine Baka units know all about this. Someone learned the hard way. Now, if Kinja was a VTOL unit, she could also jump out of the plane. Just for those few VTOL infantry units. Like, that's how you deploy good VTOL infantry. You put them there, and the VTOL guys just hop out the back like they don't care. Attacks against infantry with jump or VTOL are made as though the infantry moved 0 hexes, but adding a +1 modifier for the jump. So she's not moving much, but she is moving.
Okay.
And I was like, this is good. This is all. The book had all this, essentially. And I was like, but that's not enough. I wanted more. So then I went to the Tome of Strategic Operations, Advanced Aerospace Combat, because I made a mistake in the sense of wanting to play classic Battletech the way the rules writers intended it to. So I went and I was like, all right. And StratOps is like, you can't deploy infantry in atmosphere space interface, aka the edge of the atmosphere. I was like, that's fine. We're not that high up.
So the Red Bull jump from space doesn't happen?
No, that's the interface. That's you got to be in air, in atmosphere. You can choose an altitude level, but you got to be in the air.
Okay.
It did say that infantry can drop 3 altitude levels in 1 turn in a standard environment. So there's no like super weighting, thankfully, for this. In different like atmospheric pressures, it's different rates. So fall faster, fall slower. Yeah, we're not getting to that, thankfully. But I was stuck in this because Kinja has a parafoil. She has her little parachute that she can control where she's landing because she wants to land on the building. She wants to do some corporate espionage. The way you would do this is you would designate a hex in secret after everything on the ground is moved. You reveal the hex. She then has to roll to land. For infantry, it's just a 2d6 against a 5-up. And this is where like weather conditions or anything would modify that. So infantry can do it pretty easily. We're not getting into like mechs dropping or anything like that. We're just talking about Kinja Rodriguez.
What happens if you don't roll a 5-up, Josh?
Well, if you rolled a 5-up, you're good. You're great. Perfect. If you fail, you scatter 1d6 for every difference. And you count
for every difference?
For every difference. No margin of success, like divide by 2. Nope. If she rolls a 4 and she needed a 5, she rolls 1 hex. She rolls a 3, she scatters 2 hexes.
Is it 2 hexes or 1d6 for every? So I'd be rolling 1d6. So I could say I rolled a 3 and I'm off by 2.
You scatter by 2. So she's not moving too far away. Like Thankfully, she's infantry, so she can pretty get close to where she wants. The problem is you also count as falling a level for each difference. So on a 4, she counts as falling 1 hex level, rolls a 3, she fails and falls 2 levels. And I was like, ugh. And then I had to go back to Total Warfare to find out how much infantry does. Jump infantry take 1d6 damage, and battle armor take 1 damage per every 2 levels they fall. So she's getting like a broken leg.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Like she's probably not going to die until like she scatters a lot. And this is when I was like, okay, is a 5-up scary? Like, what is that? And this is when I was like, then I had to look up parafoil. So like if you have jump and parafoil, it's a -2. So really, she's doing the stealthy deploy. She's not doing the safe deploy, she's doing the stealthy deploy. If you have jump and parafoil, it's -2. So she just needs to not roll snake eyes. If she had a jump jet. She doesn't have a jump jet, so that's so she's just parafoiling in.
Okay. And is this just a straight 5-up? There's no modifiers to that?
The weather.
Unless you
weather and other stuff, yeah.
Fascinating.
I know.
So possible. She could absolutely jump out.
Possibly jump out. And then just like Alpha Strike, you can't attack the turn you land, but you also have a +3 target movement modifier because, you just fell down several hundred hexes.
Going fast. Hard to hit.
Now, I wanted to add this because Kestrel got angry at you. Did you know the infantry units with VTOL MP can mount a VTOL or WIG at the start of their ground movement phase in the air, provided they are at the same elevation and in the same hex?
I did not know that, but that's why I asked Joshua, and I think
he got angry.
I think he's been asked it a time or two before. So,
yeah, because I feel like Sylph battle armor make more rules writers angry because they do so many weird things.
That's what he said. He said they're incredibly niche and it's a real pain in the butt to work around.
Yeah. Stop making them VTOL. So could a unit that is possibly considered flying, quote unquote, hop into a VTOL that is also flying as long as it's at the same altitude? Yes. I'm going to go with yes. I'm going to say possible. Maybe even plausible.
Wild.
The more you know, everyone. Well, I think I don't know if I'm going to say fun listening to us talk about the rules for deploying units out of VTOLs, but it is at least informative, and I might use the classic rules. I know I've used the Alpha Strike rules, but now I know what they are without having to look through the errata, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it's a nice refresher, at least for the Alpha Strike stuff, and I had never used them in Classic. And it is always fun when you read something in a book. You always have to wonder, like, is this even doable? It makes for great fiction, very exciting writing, but do the rules even support this? And it's nice to know that, yes, they do. And everything, you got to make a roll or two, but it's all legit.
Yeah.
That's great. It's fun. So you too can recreate Kendra Rodriguez's nighttime raid by the rules if you'd like to, with what you've learned today. Congratulations.
Just don't roll up 2, 3, or 4.
Unless you want your spies to have broken legs.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for us tonight.
Yeah, I want to thank Bryan again for coming on out and talking with us about Voidbreaker, and hope you all had a good time and learned something about paratrooping spies.
Now, if you thought that was all of the content for our Bryan Young interview, you would be very wrong. We have a spoiler-filled section that we will be releasing later after everyone gets a chance to read the book. So stay tuned for our future episodes where we will add that in. That's it for tonight, folks. Remember, don't shop for Mechwarriors, adopt.